So this part is going to be about what I would call the reproductively successful son. So it isn't just the successful son, it's the son who is successful at continuing the human species. So maybe again, reproductive isn't exactly the right word, but it's the best phrasing I had at the time. So maybe the title of this video is different. Again, I don't know. But I'll just start. Firstly, we must understand that there are certain behaviors and traits that make a man attractive to women, speaking of women as in all women, and some that make him unattractive to women. Perhaps most notable is his position in the male competence hierarchy. So that's actually going to be part 12, the second part, or sorry, yes, part 12. And it's going to be the second part of the biological part, so the next part. We're going to go, I'm going to talk more about the male competence hierarchy. It's going to be about the whole video is going to be about that. But I think it's one of, if not the most important things that women look for in a man is their ranking among other men and other women, among other people. So his position in the male competence hierarchy, his career choice, income level, stability, problem solving abilities, intelligence, charisma, and social status is all part of that male competence hierarchy thing. Secondarily, might be a physically symmetrical body. So humans look for symmetry in the body. It's a sign of youth and a sign of health, a sign of good genes. Perhaps somewhere beneath that is his physical body size, so his muscle mass, his height, his body fat percentage, his shoulder to hip ratio. Women typically want a men with like a V taper, so they have a smaller waist or hip, and then it goes out like this to their shoulders. Maybe more than me, but it goes out like a V, and etc. It's important to note that everything a man ever does relates to his position in the male competence hierarchy, which is in turn related to his attractiveness to women and therefore to his ability to reproduce. So I want to pause. I actually went too far, I think. I want to talk about the first thing. So there are certain things that a man cannot do to increase his attractiveness to women, and that would essentially be his DNA. Now there is actually there's either the idea that there might actually be evidence for this that you can, by acting a certain way, by acting like forthrightly in the world and courageously perhaps, you can activate genes that were otherwise turned off in your DNA, and that can actually boost the DNA in terms of survival capability for your offspring. And so that's actually really cool. And so, like technically you can't change your DNA, but you might actually be able to do that. You might actually be able to change your DNA. And so that might not actually be true. And that's very important in my opinion. So that's really cool. That is. But for now, we're just going to assume, hey, you really can't change your DNA, at least for the most part, right? You can't really change your facial attractiveness genetically speaking. Now, you can do that other ways. I mean, obviously, there's things like plastic surgery, but your DNA is your DNA, and that's that. Maybe. But we're going to treat it as if it is. But there's other things, like your level in the male competence hierarchy, specifically things like your income level and stability, although that is predicted highly by IQ. Problem solving abilities and intelligence, that's again computational ability, so maybe also genetic. But charisma and social status isn't really genetic. You can change those things. Physically symmetrical body, you can't do that much about that. That is largely genetic. And then perhaps somewhere beneath that is physical, so muscle mass. You can't change your height. Body fat percentage, shoulder to hip ratio. I mean, you can change 75% of those things that I listed. So, there's a lot of things you can change. And so now we'll get into this. It's important to note that everything a man ever does relates to his position in the male competence hierarchy, which is in turn related to his attractiveness to women and therefore to his ability to reproduce. Therefore, Everything a man does is to increase his chance of reproducing. Now, subsets of being able to reproduce are increasing your rank in the male competence hierarchy and surviving, both of which, among other things, both of which are related to one another and often or always correlated. The most productive thing a young man, a son, can do is become a father. More specifically, a good father. From an evolutionary perspective, a good father is a father who gives his son the best chance that he can to reproduce and to become himself a good father. This is the father-son pattern manifesting itself across generations, and this is what we are aiming to do, even if we don't know it, if we are aiming properly at all, or aiming in accordance with our physiological cues, if you prefer that over the word properly. Okay, so young men have the responsibility, speaking from an evolutionary perspective, they have the responsibility of becoming the type of man that women are attracted to, that women are interested in. And they have this responsibility because they have the responsibility upon them to reproduce. It even says in the book of Genesis, I think it's Genesis 1:28 or something like that, or maybe 1:29, where God says, he says to humans, but to all other animals as well. He says, be fruitful and multiply. And some interpret that as a command. I'm not going to get into that, but some interpret that as a command, as the first command. And it's interesting, because it's like that's the foundation, right? I mean, it's said right there at the beginning, right there, like the 28th verse of the Bible. I think there's like 30 something thousand verses, and then the 28th or 29th verse or whatever is God saying, "Be fruitful and multiply." So that means that's really important. If that's all the way at the beginning, that's important, and I think it is to be taken very importantly, and maybe most important, right? I mean, I said either the last video or one previously that the most important thing you can do is have children and raise them properly. That is the most important thing you can do in your life. There's nothing that you will do that will ever have as much lasting meaning in the world than that. And that's that. And it's important to grasp that. And so, as a young man or a young son of a father, if we're going to use this specific family structure, even evolutionarily, even like scientifically speaking, the thing you are called upon to do by your physiological cues and by the evolutionary process that's been taking place for billions of years, you are called upon by your ancestors, so to speak, to continue in the propagation of the human species across time. And you're called to do that to the best of your ability. And that's what young men are called to do. And so the way you begin doing that, if you haven't started at all, is to make yourself attractive to women. Obviously, because if you aren't attractive, if you are not attractive to women, then you are not going to be able to reproduce, and that means death without children, and that means you did not partake in the continuation of the species, and that means you failed your purpose of your life. So that matters the most. So you have to make yourself attractive to women. You have to fix yourself up, get your life together, find a stable job, right? Like make money. Like making money is still like an evolutionary thing, right? Because money means security. Money means you have food on the table. Money means you have shelter. Money means you live, right? Because if you don't have money, you die. Most of the time. There's kind people, there's churches, but if you run out of money and you can't get access to food, you die. Right. And we are trying to avoid death. Our physiological cues propel us to avoid death and to pursue life-giving things. Right. And so that's the goal. The goal is to become attracted to women by taking on responsibility for your own life, Not blaming the outside world and saying the world's so messed up. Because think about it. I'm saying to make yourself attractive to women so that you can reproduce. But all you need to reproduce is one woman, right? So if you can't reproduce with even one woman, that means all women reject you. And if all women reject you, they're right and you're wrong. So you fix yourself up, not the world. And like we said, the fundamental principle is that it's better that things should exist than that they should not exist. It's better that there is something rather than nothing. And even if you don't like the word better, you have to act as if that proposition, as if that axiom is true. You have to act in accordance with that, because that's what the evolutionary process and your ancestors insist upon, or something like that. And so you can't blame the world, because if you blame the world, that's like a genocidal viewpoint. Oh, the world's all wrong. It's messed up at its core. You know, the spirit of being, God, is incorrect and false, and therefore it should cease to exist. Like, that might seem like a jump. It's not that much of a jump. Trust me. And so you have to take responsibility for yourself. You have to fix yourself up. You have to become responsible to women. And you hold and bear the cross, burden, and responsibility of continuing the human species into the future.